Hello and welcome to another Genshin character review. Today we are taking a look at our first dendro character, Baizhu. What? He was the first character that we meet that had a dendro vision, and now he's the second to last character we get in the Sumeru patches. Anyways, Baizhu is a dendro support, he's also a catalyst user. His main role is providing insane amounts of healing, while also providing a small shield and a bit of single target dendro application. For first overall thoughts on Baizhu, he does his job too well, to be honest. His heals are insane, and the shield is okay for providing some resistance to interruption, while also being nice on mainly quicken teams for the dendro application. So, let's look at his kit and see him in more detail. We won't be looking at his attacks as nothing is tied to them, but I will mention that they look really nice. They are these poking vital points fighting style, especially in the trailer they show that really well. And they look good, definitely, although they don't really have, because of Baizhu's damage on his attacks, they are not really that impactful, let's say. And his charge attack is a sort of like dendro energy slam. It's okay. So, to the skill we quickly go, and Baizhu's skill is that he throws a dendro snake. Don't look at the beta icon for this thing. That deals damage and bounces to up to 3 enemies and then comes back to Baizhu, or your active character. If there aren't any enemies around, it will just bounce to the same enemy many times. Although it will deal damage, but I believe it doesn't continuously apply dendro. When it does come back though, it heals the entire party based on Baizhu's max HP, and it heals a lot. The average amount is like 5 to 8,000 depending on your build. It doesn't really do any damage, and it's not crazy reliable dendro application depending on where it bounces, but it fulfills its role. It's a major heal with a bit of a dendro application in it. Good thing is that it generates a hefty amount of particles as well, which is nice, and also generates them at the beginning, at the first hit. This is, again, really amazing because Baizhu's burst has an 80 energy cost, and it gives you a buff that generates a very fragile shield every 2.5 seconds and launches a projectile towards the nearest enemy with priority on the enemy that you are attacking. This happens whenever the shield breaks or its duration ends. So basically you get a shield. If it breaks, it hits an enemy, or every 2.5 seconds, when the duration will end and a new one will get created, it will also launch that same projectile. Additionally, when the shield is created, your active character gets healed a nice amount. This effect has a pretty good duration of 14 seconds, but the dendro application can be a bit inconsistent, but on quicken teams, it usually isn't much of a problem. Damage-wise, you shouldn't care about it, it doesn't deal any damage. As for Baizhu's Ascension talents, his first one is that depending on your active character's HP, Baizhu gets different buffs. If your character is below 50% HP, Baizhu gets a healing bonus, while if they are above, he gets dendro damage bonus, even though you never really build him with damage stats, and also his multipliers, as I mentioned, are not good, so this is kind of useless, because you're basically buffing minimal damage, so it would have been much better if it was energy recharge. I think that would have been much nicer. As I mentioned, it's your active character that matters, so if you have an active character that is low HP and Baizhu is at full, switch to them and Baizhu will get the healing bonus and heal more, compared to just letting Baizhu be on the field and healing the other character. As for his second Ascension talent, it's that for every 1,000 HP, capping at 50,000, that Baizhu has, he buffs dendro reactions. This is a nice buff, very welcomed, but it isn't crazy, because dendro reactions favor elemental mastery a lot, so it's kind of similar to buffing, like an AM buff can be very similar to this buff, but again, it's nice to have, although there's no need to chase artifacts and other things in order to max it out. It's not super needed, but it's nice to have, right? It's an Ascension talent for a reason. As for constellations, I usually don't mention them, but up until Baizhu C2, we do have some nice constellations, and C2 can be, C2 on lots of characters can be a nice, it can be a nice stepping stone, you know, like you get C1 and then on a rerun you get C2. It's okay value if there's something there. His first constellation gives him an additional skill charge, which helps a ton with energy. And his second constellation is that when your character hits an opponent, Baizhu will launch an attack that deals some damage and heals for a percentage of his skill multipliers. And this can happen every 5 seconds. This is just some extra dendro application if you really need it. It's not super necessary. He's still pretty single target. To be honest, C1 is a very good constellation that actually I would sort of encourage hunting, but it is not needed. But it seriously feels nice throwing 2 skills and basically having your burst back up. And that's the whole kit, talents and constellations. It's, again, pretty good for what it needs to do, which is healing, most importantly, some resistance to interruption with a crystallized shield basically splashed on top, and a bit of dendro application. So for the teams he fits into, I mentioned them before, but it's primarily Quicken teams that like him, because he covers a lot of positions so that you can bring more offensive stuff. Instead of searching for an electro healer like Cookie, where she could be needed, let's say, in an Al Haitham team instead of, Kaching, let's say, or Seno, you can bring Baizhu, which again gives you heals, gives you dendro application, and gives you a shield. And well... I mentioned it, one of the teams that was super looking for him is Seno. Yes, finally, the Seno support is here. It feels so good playing Seno with Baizhu, and I'm super happy that I get to fully utilize my Thundering Fury Seno finally. Kachinga again can also enjoy Baizhu, while somebody like Al Haitham or Tinari might struggle with Baizhu because he is again primarily single target in his application, so he isn't the perfect deep hood holder unlike Yao Yao or Nahida. But he's still good for battering, especially with C1. Like, he generates a lot of particles, so Al Haitham should not have any problems, definitely not Tinari. But again, because you mostly want deep wood on those characters, right, because they're using spread instead of aggravate, you need a good deep wood holder, and Baizhu isn't that crazy, but I think he can work on an Al Haitham team primarily. You can also use him in Bloom as the healer and slight buffer, and if he is the driver on field, then he can use deep wood. And that really nicely moves us to artifacts. So if he can't be a good deep wood holder, what do you give him? Well, since again Seno and Kaching and other aggravate teams don't need it, with Deepwood, your main focus is on HP and energy recharge. Since his damage is poor, just maximize his heals, and thus you also are maximizing the buff, but also make sure he always has his burst up. So a combination of Tenacity or the new Varukasha, what's it called, and then Emblem is your best choice, right? HP and ER. As for main stats, it's either triple HP using an energy recharge weapon, or energy recharge on the sands, and then HP, or maybe you can fit a healing bonus circlet, although to be honest, just get HP to maximize the buff. When using an HP weapon, you use the ER sands. Same with substats, focus on ER and HP, no need for elemental mastery or crits or attack. You can run double HP artifacts if you see that Baizhu has no problems with getting his burst, especially at C1 with like double Electro, he has no ER problems whatsoever, so just using an ER Sands is plenty enough to battery his burst, so just slap him, ER HP on the main stats, and then Vorukasha and Tenacity for double HP. Other than that, I seriously cannot think of anything else. Seeing my Baizhu with C1 and Prototype Amber, or even his own weapon, he always has his burst, but I seriously don't know what else to give him. I'm at 49,000 HP at level 90, and I just don't know what to give him because his damage is that poor. You don't care about his damage, right? Do you care about Yao Yao's damage? No, you fucking don't. Right? So 49,000 HP with tons of ER, you're seriously at a roadblock on saying, do I give him dendro damage bonus? Do I give him something else on the main stats? Unfortunately, there just isn't anything. ER and HP it is. Just be happy that you always have the burst up and you have like close to 50,000 HP. To be honest, yeah, I can't seriously find anything else to recommend on artifacts. And lastly, for weapons, your choices, to be honest, are kind of set in stone. You can use an energy recharge weapon, most likely Favonius, to help the team as well, but his best and super free-to-play weapon is Prototype Amber. And to be honest, 99% of people are running Prototype Amber. At R5, it is insane value, and to be honest, it's just a budget version of his own signature weapon, so you can see why it is so good. It's literally his weapon with lower stats. Plenty of HP, and then energy back after using Burst is absolutely insanely good for Baizhu. And yeah, like R5 Prototype Member, just the absolute best. I guess Thrilling Tales is also pretty nice. Just make sure Baizhu comfortably has his burst up when needed, and you can use Thrilling Tales to buff somebody's attack. Although, again, looking at teams that Baizhu fits in, the attack buff isn't crazy. Like, look at Al-Haytham and Senno. Keqing might enjoy the attack buff, and Senno and Al-Haytham can also use it, but again, they also enjoy EM, so it's not the best, right? If you're struggling to get Baizhu's burst with Thrilling Tales, then just use a Prototype Ember and you won't miss Thrilling Tales. Also, rotations can be a problem, right? You need to rotate properly with Thrilling Tales, and depending on your energy needs and whatever, you might actually not like that. Or with Senno, depending on your buff durations, you might not be able to use Thrilling Tales. That's the thing. And for 5 stars, well, you have only 2 choices, which are Baizhu's own weapon and Kokomi's weapon. Somewhat, even though both of these weapons are super not worth it if you have an R5 Prototype Amber. Baizhu's weapon is literally, as I said, Prototype Amber with some buff stats, and it gives dendro damage instead of healing your party. But with this dendro damage, just like his passive talent, you are boosting minimal damage by a minimal amount, so it doesn't matter in the absolute slightest. As for Kokomi's weapon, it has the same stats, but it gives a bit more healing bonus, and to get energy back, you need to do normal attacks. So I guess if you use Baizhu as a driver in Bloom, you can use Kokomi's weapon. But both of these weapons just completely lose all of their value in front of an R5 Prototype Amber. There's seriously no reason to try for these weapons with a Prototype Amber. It doesn't necessarily need to be full R5, but because with refinements you increase the energy you get back, get it as high as possible. That's the thing. And to be honest, we don't have that many craftable catalysts that are super good, so you should have some billets. You should have some billets. You might you might think of the Sumeru craftable. Unfortunately, that one gives you Elemental Mastery, and you can't even share the Elemental Mastery like the other weapons where you spawn the leaf. No such thing on the catalyst. So, Prototype Amber it is. As much HP as possible. And that's it. I was super looking forward to Baizhu because I so wanted to finally be able to play Senno with no problems. And also, he does share the voice actor with Big Bro Nier from Nier Replicant in Japanese, so I'm super happy to have him alongside Yao Yao, who shares the voice actor with Emil. We're just missing gold. Renato Deer has Kaine, so that's gonna be awesome. If she becomes ever playable, I'm gonna have the Nier party on me. Then I just need the Shiro, Grimoire Vice. And that's it. Next up is the baby girl Kave, so stay tuned. Like the video and sub to help the channel. Check and follow my Twitch for streams. We recorded this voiceover on stream, and the footage from the background is recorded live, so you can come hang out, talk Genshin, talk anything. And I also upload random stuff on Twitter, so you can check that out as well. Goodbye.